we were told that Dad had 6 to 12 months. We ended up having 2.5 years, and I wouldn't give a minute of that back.
Yeah.
But admittedly, probably for the last year, Dad was on his last months and then last weeks and last days. So I was white knuckling, solidly white knuckling for probably the last 6 months.
Yeah.
And to illustrate how burnt out I was, the day that Dad passed away at 4 a.m.,
Hi, I'm Dr. Jodi Richardson, and this is Well, Hello Anxiety. In a world that often moves too fast, we're here to pause, breathe, and understand anxiety together. Each episode will explore practical strategies, share honest conversations, and uncover the science behind anxiety and well-being, all while creating a space where it's okay to not be okay. Let's continue this journey together. If you are caring for an aging parent, or maybe even a sick child or a partner who needs extra support, maybe you're juggling the demands of raising your own family and being the go-to person for a loved one who's unwell, I definitely fall into that aging parent category. For those of you who are familiar with the podcast, you will know that I've been married to Peter for a long time. His mum has dementia, and I'm also finding that with my own parents, my dad's physical health and cognitive health is really declining, and that's really creating a lot of stress. And so this conversation's come at a really good time for me as well. So we're going to speak to the author of an incredible book who is here to talk to us about her own journey in caring for her dad, but she's going to help us all kind of really understand that as part of this cycle of life, we're not alone, and there's a lot of support available for us. That said, there are more than 3 million Australians who are caring for someone they love, and most of the carers are women, and the system can be really difficult, incredibly difficult and quite frustrating to navigate. So we're going to get help with that too. My guest today, Casey Beros, she actually uprooted her young family and moved across the country when her dad became terminally ill. She stepped into the role of his primary carer and advocate, and despite nearly 2 decades of experience as a health journalist and a TV presenter, she actually discovered that it's really confusing and overwhelming, in the world of care. And she's actually shared her experiences not only in a documentary that she filmed with her dad, but also in an incredible new book, aptly titled Next of Kin. And it's actually a really beautiful memoir, but it's got so much practical advice. And we can all benefit from hearing what we can do to support the people that we care about through kind of like lots of big changes, but also like really looking after ourselves as well. So, Casey, that was a long intro, but thank you so much for joining us. It's really timely to be talking with you today for me personally, but so many listeners are just going to take so much from this conversation. So welcome.
Thank you so much for having me, Jodi. I'm excited to tuck in.
Yeah, look, it's such an important conversation, and I wanted to check in with you. You uprooted your family. There's incredible story to talk about, but I just want to check in with how are you now, because I know that your dad passed away nearly 2 years ago. It's been a long journey for you, and I just wanted to see how you're doing.
Well, thank you for asking. I am pretty good. Each day is different. Anybody who's listening to this who has lived with grief will know that you can hit different stretches of road in that experience, and that how you feel on a Tuesday can be different to how you feel on a Friday. How you feel one week can be completely different to another. Grief is very much running the show here. My dad always taught me actually that, grief doesn't come for a visit, it moves in. And so if you can set a place for it at the table, if you can pack a bag for it when you go on holidays, if you can create room for it in your life, it actually doesn't have to be this thing that we fear. And I think we do culturally kind of fear grief because it's associated with loss, and we hate to lose, especially things that we love. And so I am really self-compassionate most of the time.
Yeah.
Not all of the time, but most of the time, I'm pretty self-compassionate. I just try and allow for it to be whatever it is. And, as we come up to almost 2 years of having lost dad, more than anything, I'm just grateful, really, really grateful to have had the chance to have him as my dad. I had him for almost 40 years of my life.
Yes.
And I had the privilege of getting to care for him at one of the hardest times of his life. And part of what I hope my work does is inspire other people to do the same.
Gosh, it's a really selfless decision that you made, and I can only begin to imagine what that meant for you emotionally, and not to mention logistically for your family. Can you tell us a bit about kind of, how that decision came to be and what it actually meant for you to become your dad's primary carer?
It's funny because I hear you say that it was selfless. And actually, I feel like it was quite selfish. And by that, I mean, I don't remember ever even having a conversation with my husband whereby I said, this is really important to me. Are you okay with this? Can we do this? I just said, my dad is terminally ill. We are getting on a plane and we will work out what's next.
Yeah.
So I don't remember making a decision. We were living in Sydney, had been for 15 years, but I grew up in Perth. So that's where my dad was. That's where he called me from to deliver that news. And I don't remember ever thinking I'm going to move back to Perth and I'm going to become his primary carer. I don't even know if I had that terminology or vernacular yet.
Yeah.
It was more this like compulsion, didn't feel like duty, felt like there was just no place that I was going to be rather than by his side. And at that point, when I received the call, he didn't tell me this, but somebody else told me this, and my research told me this, that he had 6 to 12 months to live. And so I knew that time was finite, that we were going to have less of it rather than more of it. Yeah. And for those reasons, I think also because it was June 2021, we were in the grips of COVID, we were making decisions a little bit differently then. Anybody who's listening will remember many schools were closed, lots of people were working from home, lots of borders were closed. And I think partially, and this is why I say it was a bit selfish, partially I was just terrified that we were going to end up as one of those poor souls on the Today Show pleading with the politicians to please let us in to say goodbye to my dying dad. We were seeing those stories all the time and they broke my heart. And I just was desperate for that to not be our story. And I always say I'm an eternal pessimist. And by that, I mean, when somebody says to me 6 to 12 months, I hear 6 at best. And in this setting, it's quite a good thing because it spurs you into action. Yeah. You don't dawdle and think, oh, well, 6 to 12 months, I could wait a couple of weeks and then head back there. And I immediately leapt into action. And I'm so glad that I did because we landed in Perth at midday, and at that exact same time, midday, there was a press conference with our then Premier Mark McGowan saying that at midnight that night, he was closing the borders behind us indefinitely. So we made it into Perth by 12 hours, quite literally by the skin of our teeth.
Yeah.
COVID was not really a thing in Perth yet. They'd stayed protected here for a really long time, perhaps because of those quite heavy-handed border closure measures.
Yeah.
And so we were very, very lucky that we were able to get in. And I'm so glad that we did because Dad ended up having a lot longer than 6 to 12 months. We ended up getting 2.5 years with him, which was amazing. But in my head, I thought we're going to get 6 months at best. So I'm going to get back there and juice every single moment out of these 6 months. And we are going to walk him through this. It felt like he walked me into this life and I had this one opportunity to walk him out. And if anything, I felt so grateful that I hadn't just gotten a call saying, your dad had a heart attack today and he's gone.
Yeah.
So many people get that call. Tragic. No, I was grateful that that wasn't our story, that there was some time.
What you just said is, yeah, he walked you in and you wanted to walk him out. Your dad just looks like the most amazing person. I've looked, looking on your socials and seeing, you're a TV presenter, you're a health journalist. You started at some point documenting the journey, and so we're able to sort of see so many of the wonderful things that you did together and get a bit of a feel for what your dad was like. There's even one where you were both doing a little TikTok dance. I thought that was so cute. Your gorgeous dad was joining in that, and it's very, very special. But it's not something that, like this cycle of life, it's something that the acceptance that you spoke about earlier, this when you were talking about grief, I love the beautiful way that you put about sort of setting a place for it and welcoming it in, and that your dad, he sounds like a very, very wise man. It's very hard when you are, like, for so many carers looking after family members, and that, the classic sandwich generation, which I guess there's carers of all sorts with, partners and children and family members and the like. But, with our parents aging, it can be just so hard for carers to sort of manage and balance. You were able to move with your family. Not everybody feels compelled to do that. You said you felt compelled. So it looks different for lots of people. What's it like for carers? It's really hard, isn't it? And I know that it's really tough for so many reasons. Can you paint a bit of a picture for us about what your experience as a carer was, what surprised you about it, because you were sort of stepping into a new kind of world, I suppose, and what you saw that took you by surprise and that you'd really love for listeners to understand? Because if you're not in a caring role to some extent now, chances are you probably will be at some stage in your life.
Yes, and one of the things that I think is really interesting is that I have conversations with people all the time, and I say, are you a carer? Are you a caregiver? Do you have care experience? And they'll say no. And I'll say, oh, that's interesting. Do you have children? And they'll say, yes, I have 2. And I'll say, do you have parents that you're still in touch with? And they'll say, yes. And I'll say, are they aging? And they'll say, oh, yes, actually, I took my mum to the doctor last week. And I'll say, do you have any friends who struggle with a chronic condition, maybe a mental illness, somebody that you check in on semi-regularly to make sure that they're okay? And they're like, oh, yeah, actually, my friend. And I'm like, you are a caregiver. You just don't associate, you don't give yourself that term. And in all fairness, I probably didn't either.
Yeah.
Because parenting is parenting, and your parents are your parents. And they say that we have 3 million carers in this country. I suspect that number is significantly higher. But people don't think that they fit the criteria for being a carer. But my criteria for being a carer or a caregiver is that if you spend any of your time providing care for free to somebody that you love, anybody that you love, a child, a parent, a friend, a sibling, doesn't matter. If that's you, even if it's 1 hour a week or 2 hours a week, you are a carer. I think inherently we are all carers. And to your point, if you're not yet, then you will be. So to answer your question, some of the things that surprised me were, we have this term, the sandwich generation, and I cannot stand that term because whoever designed it, I can't, I wish I could, but whoever designed it clearly has never been in the position that it was designed to describe, which is caring for 2 sets of people, usually small children and aging parents at the same time. These 2 sets of people, whilst there's some common ground to the care provided, have completely different needs. You feel like one of those Mr. Stretch dolls from the 1980s with your arms stretched so wide that you feel like they're going to pop off from your body. And so I say in the book, sure, it's a sandwich if the sandwich was toasted in a fiery pit of hell and then dropped on the floor and then accidentally stepped on. That's more appropriate to how it feels. This stuff is not easy. It's really hard. In fact, it's the hardest of the hard. And that's partially why I wrote this book, Next of Kin, because when we are pregnant, when we become a parent, there is more content than we could ever consume in a lifetime to walk us through every single moment of that experience. We have apps on our phone showing us whether our baby is a grape this week or an avocado this week. There's more content than we could ever consume. And yet, when you get to the other end of life, when something goes wrong, whether it's disease or disability or death, there is nothing, or that's certainly how it felt to me. I couldn't find what I needed. I didn't want a clinical textbook. I didn't want a memoir of somebody else's story. Those two things hold heaps of value, but neither of them is what I wanted or felt like I needed in the moment. Yeah. So I've essentially taken those two things. So it's a very narrative-driven book, very much explored through the lens of me caring for Dad, but it also is full of really practical tips and guides on everything from our healthcare system to interviewing and capturing your people before you lose them, to how you access some services, to how you build better relationships with your healthcare professionals, to scripts of what to say when you aren't getting what you need, when you're trying to advocate for somebody. But it's all, my hope is that people reading it are losing themselves in the story and realizing that they're learning something along the way. And part of the reason that I wrote it is because I felt like I was bumbling around the healthcare system, hospital hallways, GP waiting clinics, on the phone to services, with all of these other next of kin who felt equally lost to me. And I've been a health journalist for 15 years at that point. I thought if there was anybody well placed to navigate Dad through this, it was probably me. And yet we fell through the cracks all the time.
What's an example of falling through the cracks? Like what sort of things did you experience that were just, like left you kind of like just like scratching your head and thinking, how can this happen? Especially, here in Australia.
Yes. So things like the hospital, my dad used the public system. So obviously in Australia, we have the public system, the private system. You can use one or the other, or you can use a mix of both. My dad didn't have private health insurance, so he used the public system. And in Western Australia, for the disease that my dad had, which is mesothelioma, so cancer from exposure to asbestos, we're very well positioned in this state in our public hospital to be able to deal with that disease because we have quite a high incidence here because we have a very prolific asbestos mine in this state. Yes. So we have quite a few people who are diagnosed with mesothelioma. So the public system was great for Dad in that sense. However, I certainly thought that when your health really hits the fan, so to speak, that there would be somebody in charge of chaperoning you through the system. Right, something's gone really wrong here. Things have gone a bit haywire for you. I'm going to be your case manager, whoever this person was in my mind. I'm going to be your case manager and I'm going to walk you through all the bits. And I don't know who that person was, if they were a guy with a beard and a clipboard in the sky, or a woman in a two-piece suit in a hospital office somewhere, or somebody from one of the big cancer organisations. I don't know who I thought that person was going to be, but I thought this is like high stakes, real bad news, real bad news stuff. I thought that somebody would be in charge of his care, would be with us every step of the way, would be completely across his case. And that bubble burst very quickly. And I realised that the person who's in charge is you. It's the patient, and if they're lucky, their carer or their advocate. And it is your job to make sure that your appointments are in the diary, to make sure that those appointments are going ahead, to be patient when you wait, sometimes hours for those appointments, to stitch together the services that you need. Nobody's going to do that for you. To bring your results from radiology and pathology and your GP and the latest specialist that you saw and the allied health practitioner that you just saw, to bring all of that together and to get your healthcare professionals across what you've done and the details of your case, because they wouldn't always be across that. The number of times that we walked in to see a specialist and they had not familiarised themselves with the details of Dad's case blew my mind. They would call him by the wrong name. They would ask him questions about treatment that he hadn't had. They had seemingly not familiarise themselves with any of the details of Dad's case. And we would look at each other and roll our eyes and go, okay, here's the 101. His name is Jack. He has mesothelioma. We have done combined chemotherapy and immunotherapy, little bit of radiation near his rib cage to try to shrink those tumours. That was up to us, and that felt really odd. So we ended up rocking up like we were coming to present a school project with all of his recent results and scans all printed out, and have to get them across our case. And that really surprised me. You know, we would rock up to one hospital and they would say, we need to send you down for an MRI. And we'd say, oh, it's okay, we just had an MRI on Tuesday.
Yeah.
And they would say, but that was done through this other department, and we're another department in the same hospital, and we need you to go and get another one. And I would think, you're going to do another MRI of the same part of Dad's body? Like, what a colossal waste of resources. Could you not just get the MRI that we had 3 days ago from the other department? But because the departments don't seem to speak to each other, it just seemed to me like we are just wasting resources here, putting Dad through more stress, more pressure, more time, more cost. It just, none of it made sense to me. And so that's why this book, the 2 core skills in this book are navigating our healthcare system better, and becoming a better advocate for ourselves and all the people that we love within it. And that applies regardless of whether you are caring for somebody with a terminal illness, a chronic or complex medical condition, a neurodivergent child, someone with a mental illness or addiction or a disability. It doesn't matter. Those 2 core skills remain the same. And that's what I'm trying to help teach people to do in this book.
You know, when you were saying before, Casey, about who is the person you turn to, who do you look to, who's kind of going to guide you, who's going to have answers to the questions that you've got, it's incredible that you shared that insight with us, because I've often thought and said to my mum, I just wish there was someone we could turn to and ask. It's like, you know, when you're at school, you ask your teacher. When you're in a workplace, you might have a manager to ask. In a relationship with, you know, I could talk to my husband about things. But now that Mum and I, my brother lives in London, and so it's really Mum and I. I'm just like, who do we turn to? It's like, no, there's no one. We are it. We're at the end of the line, and this is us. And you explained that so beautifully, and it's quite a confronting place to be. And thank you for the book, because that's going to be a brilliant guide for anyone who is finding themselves in this place. But it's just having the awareness first and foremost that actually you are going to be doing this, and you know, you obviously learned the hard way through so many of the experiences that you've had. I really appreciate what you said about the 2 kind of core skills in the book. One question I've got for you is this: for a carer who is looking after someone right now, and I've been on some of the forums lately, and my goodness, it's quite heartbreaking to read what some people are experiencing. But for the carer who is absolutely burnt out and at a point where they just don't feel as though they can continue, I don't know if you had personal experience with this, but what would you say to someone who's listening and saying, look, I just don't know if I can keep going. This all is relatable. I understand. I've been there. I'm walking these pathways. I'm walking these hospital hallways. What advice would you have, or what suggestions might you have?
I've been there many times, and you know, we were told that Dad had 6 to 12 months. We ended up having 2.5 years, and I wouldn't give a minute of that back.
Yeah.
But admittedly, probably for the last year, Dad was on his last months and then last weeks and last days. So I was white knuckling, solidly white knuckling for probably the last 6 months.
Yeah.
And to illustrate how burnt out I was, the day that Dad passed away at 4 a.m., I had been calling nurses to the house through our hospice at home service. They'd been coming every few hours. At this point, Dad had two subcutaneous, like butterfly pumps going into his stomach. So a little clip that goes under the skin to deliver medication through the skin because he
Right.
can no longer take things orally.
Yes.
And we had been really struggling to get him comfortable. He had had a prolonged period of what they call terminal restlessness or terminal agitation, which is essentially this kind of life force pushing out. It's like the body's last attempt to keep living. And really strange things can happen in that time.
Yeah.
People can try to get out of the bed and run away. They can be walking around the house looking for something. And that can get really dangerous when they have a huge amount of medication in their system that is designed to allow their body to get into a restful state so that it can go through the process that it needs to go through.
Yes.
And I had multiple nurses in a row say, I have never seen somebody with this much medication in their system still trying to get up and out of the bed. And so bear in mind, I have been white knuckling for months, months and months at this point. Care is never equal. My siblings are much younger than me and understandably were living their lives as they should have been and showing up and contributing in the very best ways that they could, genuinely doing their best. But really the bulk of his care had fallen to me and I actively chose it and wouldn't choose differently if I had the time again.
Yes.
But we had been really struggling to get Dad comfortable. And it was about 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning and I had nurses and I took myself off to the bathroom. I was sleeping on a stretcher in Dad's bedroom at this point. He was in a hospital bed that we had brought into his home. He wanted to die at home. Yeah. And I stood up from the stretcher and I took myself to the bathroom. And I remember I sat down on the toilet, not to go to the toilet because I needed to sit down in the bathroom. And I felt really weird. And I was like, if I just sit here for a few minutes, maybe it's my blood sugar or something. Maybe I just got up and moved too quickly. My blood pressure, don't know, feel really strange. And I thought, if I just sit here for a second, I'm sure I'll come good, kind of put my head into my hands. And then I thought, oh no, God, I'm not coming good. Maybe if I just stand up and get back to my stretcher, so just walk, the 5 meters back from the bathroom to my stretcher. Maybe if I can just lay down, my blood pressure will come good. And I stood up and made it almost to the stretcher and fainted as I was walking and fell and smacked my face on the metal edge of Dad's hospital bed. Yeah. And you won't be able to see it now, but for anybody who's watching, there is a scar down the middle of my forehead. It's a perfect little Harry Potter lightning strike. Yeah.
Gosh.
From splitting my head open, almost broke my nose and split the tissue in my lip. And so I had to call my mother, who is not with my father, has not been for most of my life. Had to call my mother it was about 5 a.m. by this point. Luckily, the nurses were there to look after Dad. So I woke up to these two very concerned faces looking over me, blood everywhere. And they were like, you need to go to the hospital. We can't deal with this here. You need to go to emergency. So I had to call my mum and say, Mum, I know it's 5 o'clock in the morning. I need you to come and pick me up and take me to hospital. And I called somebody else to come over and be with Dad so that I could go and do that because I couldn't leave him there alone. And I spent the morning in hospital getting my face glued back together and came back to Dad's house at about 11 a.m. They discharged me and I came back to his house, with this glued up face and an almost broken nose, a big black bruising underneath my eyes. And it is quite literally a sign of the toll that care can take on my face for the rest of my life. And so by the time Dad passed away that evening at about 7:30 at night, and I quite literally looked like I had been in Fight Club at that point. Yeah. And it was, it was almost laughable, the metaphorical meaning of how hard I had pushed myself to get him there. So to take a really long time to answer your question as to what I would say to them, the only antidote to carer burnout is respite. And that means either professionals or people that you know and love taking over your care responsibilities for a period of time so that you can get some rest or have some time to yourself or reset. And that could be a couple of days, and ideally it would be a couple of days. If it can't be that, maybe it's a day or a night so that you can get a good night's sleep and
Yeah.
just be off duty for a minute, because care is 24/7 stuff, particularly if you're caring for someone with a terminal illness and you're getting towards the end of that journey. And the anxiety in you, given that we're on a anxiety podcast, the anxiety in you around your phone and around them and around getting the news can feel really, really overwhelming. So switching off is not easy to do. However, it is the only antidote to burnout. You have to have some time off. And that might be, as I said, a couple of days, ideally one day, 6 hours, a few hours so that you can sleep in the afternoon, whatever you can get.
Yeah.
You need some time away from your caregiving responsibilities, and they need to be with someone that you trust so that you can relax while you're doing that. And, you know, I, especially towards the end, I didn't want to be away from Dad for 1 minute. Even on that day that all happened, Mum said to me, you should really come home and just have a sleep. And I was like, no way, please take me straight back to Dad's. I just wanted to be there. I wasn't sure when he would go away, would be devastated if I had missed that moment. I really wanted to be there with him for that. Yeah. And so respite is the only antidote. And it's much easier to say than it is to do, but there are some incredible respite services out there. There are some wonderful hospital social workers that can help you secure that. There are some community services. There are people who probably love and care about you who would step in, and you could give them a detailed set of instructions. But it's really, really important that you can go and get some rest. You need to be able to get some sleep, throw a rug out at the park and just be in the sunshine and read your book. These things sound kind of silly, but they're vital to ensure your survival, like really, really vital.
And survival, you know, it comes down to that, doesn't it? Because look at what happened to you. I mean, you literally, I mean, that you've obviously got a scar, and heads do bleed. You know, if you've had a kid who's fallen over and cut their head, they do bleed a lot. But there's an unknown end to the road that you're on. I mean, you know, like you say, you were given, Jack was given 6 to 12 months, and it was more than double that. And so, yeah, it can be a really long and an uncertain road, and the anxiety, it's just purely exhausting, and the nervous system can only cope with so much. I think respite, like one of the things you just said, was that it sounds, you know, it's like a bit like mindfulness, isn't it? Easy to describe, simple to describe, hard to do.
Yes.
For respite, I love what you've done for your dad, with your dad, and that, you know, it's incredible that you've been able to share that through the book the way that you have. For people who are caring for someone who don't want to care for them, who have to, for people who are caring for someone who really is not a good patient, as an understatement. Have you seen, you know, in all of your research and experience, you've probably seen it all. And on the forums that I've been reading, it seems to be a theme. Again, I mean, this is not scientific academic research. This is just reading people's experiences. But there seemed to be a common thread that I don't want to do it anymore. I don't know how I can keep going. But also the person I'm caring for refuses to go into respite, or maybe even make that move into a nursing home. What insights do you have for anyone who's in that situation? I know you'll have a lot of compassion too.
Of course. And I'll just say, most patients are not good patients at some point.
Okay.
Because they are coming up against some really scary stuff that I haven't been up against. So I can't imagine what it was like for my dad to be facing his mortality, saying goodbye to the people that he loved most in the world, way before he felt that he should have to.
Yes.
So I just want to pick up on what you said there about lots of people they have to care. I just want to empower people a little bit on that, because you actually don't have to. You could walk away.
Yeah.
You have autonomy. Nobody is holding a gun to your head, but that wouldn't be in line with your values from what I'm hearing. That there would be no integrity in that you wouldn't be able to live with yourself if you did that. But I think reminding ourselves that we do have a choice and that we are choosing it even when it sucks is really powerful. And what I say to people all the time is that care is never equal. So you might have multiple siblings, and I hear all the time these awful stories about, I cared for my mum for 10 years and then my brother swooped in from Melbourne and he's a lawyer and he got her to change the will and give everything to him, and then he went back to Melbourne. And, everybody knows somebody who's been through some awful story like that.
Yes.
And I think it's really important to remember that care is never equal. I've never had a conversation with a family who have said to me, it was so amazing. We all worked perfectly as a team. There was never any dramas. We all did the exact same amount on the exact same stuff. It was chef's kiss perfection. It just doesn't happen. And so I guess what I would say to people is, and this was advice that I was given that I sorely needed, you show up with as much integrity as you can muster in this situation, because on the other side of this, and there will be an on the other side of this, it will shift and change. Everything does.
Yes.
Right? On the other side of this, you will walk away from this experience knowing that you gave it everything that you possibly could. We just need to make sure that you take care of yourself in the process, that you don't bury yourself in the process.
Yes.
But showing up and, I do think that it makes the grief process easier, that it removes some of the layers of complexity that so often go with guilt, like shame, disappointment, anger. I think if you can show up and give it whatever you are capable of giving it, and knowing that you really genuinely did your best will look different to their best and his best and her best. But if you give it your best, you'll be able to pack the experience away in a way that you feel really good about. And I think that that's really, really critical. And I will just say, not all relationships are great or even straightforward. I had a conversation just last night. I did a little library event here in Perth, and I had a conversation with someone who said, I'm caring for my mother. I've never had a good relationship with her. She's awful to me. My dad has never been around. I've never felt the love that I hear you describe with your dad. And she was in tears, and I said, what a wonderful person you are. What a wonderful gift you are giving them. People don't always deserve our best. They don't. And when they're going through the hardest time of their life, what does it say about you that you were able to show up and love them through it anyway? Like, I think that the universal karma and power around that for you, for nothing else but just for you, I think that that's really powerful. And this is not the right path for everybody. Like, care is no joke. So I'm not saying that if you've had an awful parent or a terrible partner, I'm not saying that showing up and caring for them is the right thing to do. You are the only person who knows the answer to that. They may, and if there's nobody else to do it, but that person has been awful to you, that doesn't mean that you have to do it. That might be a side effect of the way that that person has lived their life. And that's sad, but them's the breaks. So I'm not being prescriptive here. I hand on heart understand how lucky and privileged I am to have had the relationship that I had with my dad, that I have the relationship that I have with my mum, but none of it was straightforward. Dad was a beautiful, amazing, intelligent, wise, complicated, pain in the bum human being,
Yeah.
like the rest of us.
Yeah.
And it wasn't always TikTok dancing and smooth sailing
Yes.
and matching tattoos. And like these are beautiful highlight moments. And there was some awful moments. I don't want to paint a picture for people. Like he said to me at one point, he had chosen voluntary assisted dying. He didn't end up using voluntary assisted dying, but at one point, that's how he thought he wanted to go out.
Yes.
And one of the things that happens for people who don't know is towards the end of life, your swallow reflex starts to go.
Okay.
So Dad would have a sip of water and cough everywhere. And that's one thing when it's with water, and it's another thing entirely when it's with a liquid that is going to end your life. And so for voluntary assisted dying, you can either do self-administered, so that's mixing and drinking a liquid, and they have to be able to do it on their own. So
Yes.
they have to be well enough to be able to physically mix and drink the liquid. Or you can do practitioner administered, where a practitioner, usually a doctor, but sometimes a nurse, will come around to your house and inject you with the drug that will end your life.
Yes.
Dad wanted to do self-administered. He wanted to go out on his own terms, fully awake, as he said. And when the voluntary assisted dying people came over to our house they essentially bring over two kits. One is the real kit and one is a dummy kit. And they make the person who is dying take out the dummy kit, mix it, and drink it in front of them so that they can see that they're capable of mixing it and that they're capable of consuming 100 mils, I think it is, of this liquid.
Yes.
And it's the weirdest dress rehearsal you'll ever have.
Oh my gosh, I was
entire
thinking
life.
that. Yes. Yeah.
So bizarre. So we did that. They were satisfied. They left the kit at home with Dad. And I remember as the weeks went on and I was watching Dad deteriorate, I said to him, Dad, I think you really need to set a date to do this because I'm really nervous that you are starting to lose your swallow reflex. It used to happen that you were, every now and then you were choking on your water. Now it seems to be happening more and more. I'm really nervous about what that means for you. And I don't want your choice to be taken away.
Yes.
This is what advocates do. We're advocating for what they want, not what we want. So, and I remember him getting really cranky with me and saying, I feel like you are rushing me towards my grave.
Oh.
And it felt like somebody had lined me up and punched me in the guts.
Yeah.
For somebody who had given up her life, had moved her family across the country to come back and get him the opposite of walking him to the grave early. I was trying to get him every spare minute I could get him.
Yeah.
To hear him say that, it broke my heart a little bit.
Yeah.
And he was fearful and angry and distressed and facing something that most of us deeply, deeply fear facing.
Yes.
So I had to give him some grace around that. I had to give him some compassion around that. That hurt me. And so I share that so that people understand, like, this is not, I don't care how great your relationship is with the person. It's not all smooth sailing. And for people who don't have a great relationship with their person, you might just find some warm spots along the way if you do choose to step into that experience. So it's a choose your own adventure and you don't know what you're going to get. So if you've got it in you and you feel like that's something that you want to be able to say to yourself on the other side of that, step in. And if you can't, because your situation doesn't allow for it, because the person doesn't deserve it for whatever reason, then that has integrity in it too.
It does.
Because self-preservation is key.
You've answered that question with such insight and such grace and such compassion for every variation of every situation that listeners who are carers, many of you might identify yourself as a carer now where you otherwise perhaps didn't. And I think about the choose your own adventure. The only difference is if you don't like the way that's going, you can go back, can't you, and have a do-over.
True. True.
Just before we finish, Casey, one of the things like I cannot recommend listeners. This is a book everybody needs. I know that it's been called the Barefoot Investor for Care. Every household needs one. And one of the things that you did share amongst so many chapters with so much to learn and to really guide us all. One of the things was dark humour for dark times, and humour is such a balm, isn't it, in a really difficult, emotionally distressing kind of time in our life. And I wonder if you had anything that you could share around that sort of made a difference for you, or I recently, just as a side, it's coming up when we're recording this, coming up towards the middle of September. It's almost a year since we lost my beautiful Auntie Jen, who I just adored. We're very close. My podcast, Casey, is produced by Positive Media, and once a year we have a mental health event called Relate through 89.9 The Light here in Melbourne. And I'd been presenting at the Relate mental health event, and it was about 11 o'clock, and I got in my car to head home from the event, which is going to be about an hour's drive, and my mum called. And I thought, oh gosh, because when my mum went overseas to do the Camino, we put her in our family Life 360 group so I could watch her travel across Spain. And so we're still all in the group. So I thought, oh, she's been stalking me. She's calling me. She knows I'm in my car. I'm on the way home. She mustn't be able to sleep. She wants to chat. Anyway, she shared the news that my auntie had a stroke. And so that was kind of like the beginning of that very, very difficult time for us. But we spent a lot of time in the hospital, and there was humour that sort of shone through at times that you just think, oh, that just sounds so like wrong, but it makes sense in the moment, and it relieves some of that tension. Was there a particular anecdote that you wanted to share before we sort of finish up?
Yes, and somebody just reminded me of this yesterday. Memory is so funny, isn't it? It's like you think things can feel really pivotal and important, and then fast forward even a short period of time, and they've just they've gone. Your brain's made room for something else. Somebody just reminded me of this last night. So we had what most people might be familiar with, something called a living wake, meaning that you're having an end of life event whilst the person who is dying is still there with you. They haven't passed away yet. So we had a living wake for my dad. We called it the party before the after party because Dad was calling the funeral the after party. And so this was the party before the after party. And Dad and I had driven and picked up his coffin. He wanted a eco-friendly cardboard coffin.
Yep.
Dad and I had driven and picked up his coffin. We brought it back to my house. We set it up in the garage, and so strange walking past this coffin all day, every day. And at the party before the after party, our intention was that we would have 30 of Dad's nearest and dearest, his community, people that he loved, family, friends, and we would all decorate the coffin. So my children were there. We were putting handprints on and glue and stickers and shells and anything went. I mean, trying obviously to be mindful of what we were allowed to put on it before its eventual use.
Yes.
But it ended up, before that happened, my dad had said to me, so my dad's name was Jack. How cool would it be if on the top of my coffin it said, Jack in the box? And then down the bottom, I want it to have like a stamp that says return to sender. And so I'm like the magical death wish fairy at this point, right? I'm like, whatever you want, you get. So I called a girlfriend of mine, bless her, I'll forever be grateful to her for this. And she had sort of moonlit as a sign maker. And I said, this is really weird, but is there any way that you would do this? She said, I would love to. Oh. So she did up the design. She came round to our house. She put this big Jack in the box on top of the coffin, and then this return to sender stamp.
Yeah.
And I think it's a really good reminder that you don't have to do things the way that things have always been done.
Yeah.
You know, I couldn't imagine my dad going to a funeral, let alone having that just did not feel right for him. And he agreed. And so instead, we had this living wake with his coffin there, with his Jack in the Box and return to sender, and we all decorated it and wrote beautiful messages to him. And it was so beautiful. And then at the after party, so his funeral, we just had it at the local bowls club. We all sat in circle, said a few words. We had a local Indigenous colleague of Dad's play the didgeridoo and welcome us to country, and we had what we called a dad market. So when you pack up somebody's life, there's some things that you want to keep, and there's lots of things that you want to keep because you don't want to get rid of them, but you don't really have any use for them. Knickknacks from the kitchen drawer and lots of their clothes, and you want to keep a few things, but you don't want to keep everything, especially because my dad was in a rental, so I had to pack up that apartment and get everything out of there so that we could give the rental back. And so rather than taking everything to St. Vincent de Paul or Good Sammy's or whatever, we said we're going to take everything down to his after party. We're going to set it all up like it's a dad market. So there's books and there's sporting equipment and there's shoes and clothes and kitchen stuff and like little knickknacks that he's picked up along the way. And so everybody who came to the after party took home a little piece of dad. And I love thinking about the fact that in somebody's kitchen drawer right now is Dad's potato peeler. Like a little bit of evidence of this life fully lived is living in somebody else's kitchen drawer. They might forget that it ever belonged to my dad, but I know that he lives on in all of these little households. People are wearing his clothes and reading his books and have his little knickknacks on their shelf. So it just makes me so happy knowing that all of these little things of Dad's, these knickknacks, are living in other people's homes and lives, and they're wearing his clothes and reading his books. And knowing that there are little pieces of him out in the world, that makes me really, really happy.
Oh, it's just such a good idea. I have a friend who's doing a similar pack up for her mum who's in a nursing home at the moment, and she's just finding it so incredibly hard to make those decisions. And so what you've just shared about the Jack's after party is it's really special, and it just helps him keep living on in other people's homes and memories and minds, and obviously it really brings a smile to your heart as well. So Casey, honestly, it's been such a delight talking with you about what can be a really difficult subject. And I just want to extend a really heartfelt thank you, because I've learned so much from you, the incredible work that you've done to kind of share your story and also share so much insight and practical suggestions. The book's called Next of Kin. Anyone listening who is just thinking, I've got to get my hands on, I need a copy of this for me or for a friend or for someone who, if you're listening, if you can think of someone who might need a copy, please direct them. Casey, where is the best place for people to find a copy of Next of Kin?
So it's in all good bookstores, lots of Dymocks across the country, Big W, Amazon, Booktopia if you'd rather get a copy online. So it's in most good bookstores now. And you're right, it's the perfect thing to give when you don't know what to give. It's, we send flowers or lasagna. This is a practical and heartfelt guide. This will hold so much value to them, regardless of what it is that they're up against. So it's a really thoughtful and kind gift. And I always say, if you're in the trenches, this book will be a lifeline for you. If you're not there yet, please pick it up and read it before you need it. Because once you are in crisis, you will be so glad that you have these skills under your belt.
What you've just said, I couldn't agree with more. I think when you're in crisis, all of the knowledge that you've shared in this book, all of the insights and all of the care and compassion, be really, really helpful to already have that under your belt, and then you can revisit chapters as you need them. Casey Beros, it has been such a joy talking with you. Thank you for your courage and your generosity, for sharing your story and your journey with your beautiful dad. And I really want to thank you as well for sharing some of your precious time with us here today. It's a really, really important conversation. I'm very grateful.
Thank you so much for having me, Jodi. And just for anybody who is listening, who is thinking, I can't keep going, I am so in the trenches, please hear me when I say it will not be like this forever. I promise. There will be another side to this, and I'm sending you a big, big hug if that's you.
Yeah, I think that will be gratefully received by many. So thanks again, Casey.
Thanks, Jodi.
Thank you for sharing this time with me on, well, hello, anxiety. Remember, understanding anxiety is the first step to managing it. Until next time, be gentle with yourself. Take things one moment at a time. Focus on what you can control and know that you are not alone on this journey. If you found value in today's episode, please share it with someone who might need to hear it too. I'm Dr. Jodi Richardson, and I'll meet you right back here next week.